All right, day one of presentations. We get to find out about who's a good fraudster and who's a good fraud detector. Maybe it's an overlap, that's the whole goal, is to actually teach you all fraud so that you can be good fraud detectives, not so that you can go out and commit fraud in the real world, though, whatever happens after graduation happens after graduation, I suppose. Yeah. Just a quick note, as you're coming up to present, if this Zoom bar gets in the way, the easiest way to get rid of it is, well, there's Control-Alt-Shift-H, but it's just easier to go up to the ellipses and just hit hide floating meeting controls. The only reason I mention this is that I'm going to hide them now, but anytime somebody hits escape to make the screen minimize, it's going to bring these controls back up again, and they're a pain to get rid of. So I just wanted, if you wanted to get rid of them, that's the easiest way to do it. We'll go in order. So Kirsten, you're going to kick things off.
Are you good? Okay, so I did my project on Pinnacle Lodging Group. It's a luxury hotel chain that had its headquarters in London, and over here are all the locations that they had. It was like scattered across Europe. And then I had my main people over here. I have the CEO, Bobby Blind. I have CFO, Souffle, COO, Ivana Samu. And then essentially my whole fraud though is about Bobby. He committed this reimbursement fraud on the company. He would basically say that he's going to all these luxury conferences and these are all the spots that he went to. And he would have all these personal expenses related to this conference on his card. He would then, like, per the company process, he would submit them to Souffle for approval. So he'd send those receipts then. And then Souffle would then approve them, and then he would get reimbursed. But once he was reimbursed, he would then cancel everything that he had previously booked, and then he would get reimbursed from the company, and he would get reimbursed from those third-party companies that the airlines, the hotels, the conference. So basically he was pocketing all the difference, and then that was how much it was, and about 227,000 pounds. And so I want to take you guys or the best way to solve my case kind of thing. So I gave a lot of information to start with, and the main part though was that you were hired because of a anonymous tip from the board of directors, or that was given to the board. And so the best way to find that tip was on the minutes, and then you could find from that tip that it was basically all about executive expenses. And the only executive expense that I referenced on anything was on travel. So from there, you should ask for the reimbursement schedule, which is basically just a document showing how much money the company paid out to each person. And that would pretty much set you on Bobby, because he was reimbursed triple what everybody else was. And then you would want to know kind of what the travel receipts were, why was he getting paid this much? And then you would see pretty much on all the receipts that they all said refundable. So that should be an indication of you wanting to question, be did the conference exist? Did he attend the conference? I had documentation to prove that the conference did exist, but for conference attendance, there's two ways to solve that. You could either reach out to the third-party company and see if he even attended the conference, or you could reach out to the hotel or the airline, see if he actually even took the flight or even stayed the night. And either way, you'd find out that he didn't do what he said he did. You could ask for the bank statement to get to that number up there. And Megan was my investigator. She pretty much got everything. So yeah, that's it. Jenna.
Did you have any Easter eggs that you included in here?
That's a great question. Yes, I did. So if you look right here, the first letter of each name of the locations is Fraud Trips LOL. So you could have skipped about half my project and gone straight to about the travel stuff. So, and then also Bobby's just a nickname. His real name is Robert, which also stands for Rob, and his middle name starts with a U. So if you say his name is Rob U Blind. All right, that's it.
So my fraud project was on Pristine Paws. It's a pet grooming company that's based in Kirksville. The owner is Sophia Barker. She's a retired CPA. Some key facts about the case and about the company. They have a loyalty member program, so returning customers can pay for their pet services on account. And then they also get priority scheduling, but they have to pay for this service or for this like member program. The company also was approved for a loan this year, and it was mentioned that they were denied the loan last year. And then I also specifically included a capitalization policy in the case materials. So the fraud was perpetrated by Sophia Barker. She was the mastermind, and she enlisted Jessica Tabert as she was the accounts personnel person. So she was the one that was doing all of the accounting related to the fraud. So the scheme was they were fraudulently inflating their profit margin to be approved for this loan. So they were doing it in two ways. They were inflating revenue by creating fake customers, and then these customers are part of that member program. So there was fake revenue being a part of that member program, and then they were also creating fake invoices for those customers. And then they were also deflating operating expenses. So they were capitalizing certain items as capital improvements when they should have been immediately expensing those. And so there wasn't really a specific path to solve it. You just had to get all the different documents and then be able to put it together and prove that how they benefited from it. So the accounts receivable schedule had a lot of customers that had outstanding balances. And if you tried to contact them, you wouldn't be able to contact them and you would find that they didn't exist. And then the loan covenant agreement, if you obtained that, it would show the profit margin as one of the requirements to obtain the loan. And so is that one and of the loan from last year. The property, plant, and equipment schedule had the capital improvements for each of the capital assets, but it didn't say what the improvement was. So you had to ask for those invoices related to those improvements. And then you had to compare those, the description of the invoice to the capitalization policy. So there were items like routine filters for a vacuum that they were fraudulently calling capital improvements. So, so you would just put it all together and request the personal bank statements. So Jessica was getting a raise for this, so that's kind of her benefit. And then Sophia was, her owner draws was based on profit margin. So she was getting more than she should have. So that's it.
Easter eggs in here.
No, I mean, other than the names, I tried to make the names kind of like animal themed. I don't know, like Barker. But yeah, that was it.
Okay, so I did Merch R Us. They're a business-to-business merchandising company. The way their fraud worked was they would sell to customers at terms of 2-10 net 30 discount terms, but all of the internal company documentation and all of the recorded stuff said that the discount was 5-10 net 30. So Gary over there, he's head of HR, and what he would do is he would edit Big Dave's salary rates so that all of the money they stole, that 3% that was missing, all of that went to Big Dave's paycheck, and he cashed it out. And then every month, they would have a poker tournament with all of the heads of all the departments. So not just these were the only people who were committing fraud, but every other head of all of the departments were invited to the poker tournament. And they laundered their money basically through that poker tournament. Big Dave would just keep buying in, and so sometimes these guys walked away with the money. Sometimes other people who were just not involved with the fraud, didn't know what was going on, walked away with the money. It really just depended on how the cards fell. Yeah, Tom over there, he was the head of sales, and he and Izzy, who was head of AR, they would sort of doctor, like whenever anybody asked for bank statements and whatnot, they would edit them to show 5-10 net 30 and all that stuff. John over in the middle there, he was the overall office manager, and he helped write all the documentation that said 5-10 net 30. He knew this was going on. He was getting paid for that stuff too. Fraud detective Kyle did a pretty good job. He got everything right. The way you would have found out was you had to go to talk to the customers, and they would have told you, oh no, there was a typo. We didn't get 510 net 30 turns, we got 210 net 30. And then from there, pretty much everything else would it just unravel. Yeah.
So in another universe, all of these lovely students actually started working at Diner 54 instead of being an accountant. So yeah, my fraud was about the fine establishment at Diner 54, but in this case was actually Diner Fraudy 4. So the nice owner, Sydney, discovered after about 6 months something funky was going on. Cash wasn't really aligning with revenue or cash balances, and she was like, I'm gonna hire an investigator. So she hires Dottie, who obviously did not continue on to work at Diner 54. She did continue with the audit investigation path to see what was going on. So essentially, what ended up happening, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it for you. 2 employees were involved in this atrocious act. And it's going to be really shocking, but the 2 employees are Dylan and AJ. So atrocious, I know. Drop out of school and become fraudsters. So what basically happened was Dylan, being a charismatic server that he is, he would essentially eye out tables and look for some certain characteristics. He'd look for senior citizens, horrible, or he'd look for just like huge parties. And whenever he was done serving them, he would basically make a note of 2 things. 1, if it was cash or credit transaction, and 2, if they took the customer copy of the receipt with them. So what he would do if it was first a cash transaction, if it was of above a certain amount that he thought was kind of a nice, maybe he could take some of that profit for him, he would basically write down the cash, basically what transaction it was, and make a note of it for later. If it was a credit card transaction, this was a little bit more obvious. He would basically, essentially, if they didn't take that customer receipt with them, he would take the receipt back to the back room where no one could see him, and he would write in a different tip amount and put that into the system to where he would get approved by AJ. So all his tips were approved by AJ, who had the manager status, because they were just best friends and very close. So that was basically the credit card tip manipulation. What he would do with those cash transactions that he noted, he would go at the end of the day, and after AJ would prove all his tips, he'd be like, all right, AJ, here are these huge cash transactions that these tables had. I think we should do something with this. And AJ would be like, I think you're right. So he would basically approve refunds for these cash transactions, and then they would just take the cash back to themselves and act like the refund happened earlier in the day, just in the normal course of business. So they got basically profits from 2 aspects, the fake refunds and then the credit card tip manipulation. And AJ, with his status as manager, was able to approve all this, and Dylan, being a server, was able to basically get all the relevant receipts and stuff. So in total, it aggregated, was over about 6 months. This wasn't something an investigator really needed to calculate, but in terms of financial damage, was about $10,000. AJ and Dylan bought really cool cars and trips. Apparently AJ, he lived with his grandma, and his grandma wasn't doing well, so that might have been a reason for doing it. Dylan had no reason. He was just in it for the profits. But yeah, you were basically, as an investigator, you would want to interview the other employees. They'd note some kind of weird things with AJ and Dylan, and tips were kind of weird. Dylan seemed to be getting a lot of tips. That's because he was manipulating them. And eventually it would all lead you to the bank statements. And yeah, so that was Diner Fraudy 4.
Okay, so I did my fraud of BNR branch. This was a small farm here in northern Missouri, absentee owner, 3 people who kind of run the farm and do the day-to-day stuff. Dale is the manager of the farm. He's in charge of purchasing everything and recording everything in the general ledger and making the financial statements. So he was taking money out of the bank account and going and purchasing equipment on Facebook Marketplace. But in case instead of just going out and actually buying equipment, he was taking the money and putting it in his pocket. The total amount that he stole was 320,000, like 500 or $50. So a lot of money there. And how you were supposed to find that out is you were given the profit and loss statements for 2023 and 2024. And then you compare them, and the depreciation for 2024 is like $100,000 more than the depreciation taken on in 2023. And then you request the depreciation schedule, and you notice that there's all these pieces of equipment that are being bought in 2024 at like the same time and around the same date. You know, there's like 2-3 pieces of equipment being bought every month, which is kind of crazy. And then the second one has to do with the sales of the farm. So the two main I guess you could say products that are produced by the farm are calves sold at auction, and then breeding stock, so bulls sold at auction. If you looked at 2023, you'd find that there was revenue for the bulls and revenue for the calves. But then if you looked at 2024, there was revenue from the calves, but none from the bulls. So basically Dale was taking the money that he would get from the sale barn, and he was putting it in his pocket, and that was $190,000 right there. And so how you would find that out is you would notice that there's nothing for revenue for the bulls, and then you'd contact the sale barn to see if they were sold or not, and then you get a receipt that would show that yes, they were sold, and who was the check made out to. So yeah, that's it.
You have kids, are you gonna name your son Dale?
Yeah, that is actually, yeah, he'll be here in July 4th. So,
All right.
yeah. So
He's got a lot to live up to.
you know, I was just thinking about it, man, it's kind of awful, I'm starting them off. Yeah, my grandpa's name, that's a place.
So my company that I did my fraud on was Boardwalk FC. Boardwalk FC is a professional soccer team that competes in the 3rd division of professional soccer. They're located in Miami, Florida. And specifically with this company, they're driven by ticket revenue, merchandise sales, and sponsorship revenue. Throughout my fraud, I had quite a bit of misleading information. So I'll kind of get into that. Parties involved were Chase Schreiber and Sonny Collins and Market Growth. These 3 parties were specifically the ones involved in the fraud. Additional parties with this team were John Schreiber, who was the ticket booth. He was the younger brother of Chase. And then Eric Jones was the financial manager, and Bailey Davis. To start with the additional parties first, John Schreiber was a younger high school kid who got this position through his brother. He often liked to take his friends to sporting events and would also be pressured by Chase to give Chase extra tickets so that he could hand them out to sponsors. So if you looked at tickets, you would see that they're a little bit misleading. Something's not all adding up, but then you would notice that, oh, the company gives out free tickets to sponsors, and so that would be where the missing tickets would be. Eric Jones, he's a older guy. Everyone at the team loves him, except he's not all there, so he makes quite a few mistakes. Everyone believes he's doing a good job, but there's no one really overlooking his work. So he might be your first suspect as the one committing the fraud, but in reality, he believes he's doing everything right, and he's not really making any mistakes. He's just not catching any of the fraudulent behavior from other people at the company. Then Bailey Davis, she might be enticed to adjust their different revenue streams. If they were able to get a sold out crowd, she received a bonus. Although if you requested the ticket attendance and matched that up, you would find that they didn't have any sold out crowds because the team is on a decline, and they have had to lower salaries of their players in the past due to the pressure of not receiving as much revenue as they have in the past. So starting with the fraud, Chase Schreiber was the marketing director. He was responsible for securing the team's sponsorship deals. Everyone loves him, known to be trustworthy. He's secured big deals in the past, but recently he decides to get with his friend Sonny Collins, who he knows and is an outside source, and start this company called Market Growth. They're basically consulting, going out and getting sponsorships for teams. Chase had found many sponsorship deals in the past, but he thought, maybe this could be a way of sneaking a little bit extra money. So how this fraud would occur would be Chase and Sonny would create fake contracts for sponsorships and come up with fake documentation showing that these companies have been paid. And Chase Schreiber would go to Eric Jones, the financial manager, and request that they receive some sort of payment. So it would be charged as an expense. Market Growth would then receive the money, which is run by Sonny Collins, and then Chase and Sonny would split the profits. Like I mentioned, Sonny Collins was the owner of Market Growth, who was laundering the money and in exchange for free tickets and a percentage of what they're getting paid for the sponsorships. So as far as the pressure, the club was on the verge of relegation. So Chase thought, if I could make it appear as if we're getting more sponsors and more attention, maybe fans will continue to promote the club and come to our events. Financial gain, obviously, both of them are getting paid. $600,000 was stolen between the two of them. They rationalized, but this is only temporary, helping keep the club afloat. They want to have a good reputation for the club, as that make it seem as if they're doing well. And it was only temporary until they got that support from the fans back. But like I said, there's no oversight from Eric. He's kind of older and out of it. He's kind of on his way out of the club. Doesn't really take his job too serious anymore. And there was weak controls. This damaged the reputation of the club. $600,000 were stolen. Revenue ended up being overstated by 1.2 million. A total loss of $600,000 from Market Growth. And how you would find this fraud out is you would notice that one of the main sources of revenue that Boardwalk FC has is from sponsorships. And so if you requested documentation from these sponsorships and dived deeper into who these sponsorships were, you would notice that some of these companies did not exist and were fictitious. And in order to find out more about Sonny Collins, you would question Market Growth and notice that, hey, this company looks a little suspicious. And then after you found the link between Chase and Sonny being friends, you would then find out that they are involved.
How close are Chase and John? Would you say they're like twin brothers?
I would not.
So curious.
If one twin commits a fraud, the other one is not involved.
Like the whole thing, like this thing, okay. Okay, so my fraud was at the company where my dad works. I thought it would be funny. He's not any of these people, but this is the people who own the company. It's a family-run business. So there's Tim and his wife Sally, and then their son Sam. And so basically Tim isn't really around as much. He likes to go on vacation and whatever. He's like, the company's super successful, so I'm gonna go down to the Florida Keys this weekend. So he's not really there a lot. And Sam is kind of spoiled. And so he's like, I want more money than this, than what I'm getting paid. So I deserve to have it. So basically, the first thing that you kind of notice would be that there was a little overtime scheme going on, which you could see from the, like, what's it called whenever you like clock in to your job? Yeah, your time card. Okay, so on your time card, their time card thing, there was a note at the bottom and it was like, this could be like adjusted if some hours happen to be missed.
So then you would be like, oh, can I see if there was any adjustments? And then you would see that there were. And then after the adjustments were made, like the thing that changed was that one of the mechanics like had some overtime that got changed, but his bank account number changed on like the adjusted payroll. And that bank account number was the same as Sam's bank account number. So he was like kind of funneling the extra overtime into his own account. Like the overtime was fake, it wasn't real. And the way that it got approved was that his mom would sometimes approve payroll whenever Tim was on vacation. And so she would approve it because she just wants the best for her son. And then additionally, he would steal some brake pads and other small things just occasionally for, $100 a month, like here and there each month. And then he would also submit personal expenses to be reimbursed. So for example, he bought a laptop, and this, you could see this on like his expense report. But if you like asked around in the office, like there was no laptop in the office. He just bought himself a laptop and got reimbursed for it for free. And Sally would also kind of be approving those things because Tim would be like gone, and it was a family run business, the wife's like approving something that should be approved by the husband, whatever, it's the family, but it's not whatever, because he was stealing money. So yeah, that was the fraud, and Dylan found it. I wore the representation.
Alright, I did mine over a company I made up called Build Trends, and they are a footwear company that does specifically online retail. They sell Yeezys, On Clouds, Nike, and other Adidas shoes. Going over the employees, you had Bill, who was the owner. He didn't really do too much in the business. He kind of just overlooked everything. He'd stop by and check on the employees. Then you had Brian, he's the shipping manager. He basically took care of everything shipping related and would package all the shoes and would ship them off. So that was his job. Then we had Harry. Harry's the marketing and social media manager. He would do like marketing to improve sales, and then he'd also reach out to social media influencers to promote sales. Tim dealt with payroll. Scott was a website developer. He would post all their products on the website, and then he would also write the reviews of customers and put those on the website. And then we had Bailey, who was the social media influencer. Overall, the fraud was from Brian and Harry. Brian would buy fake Yeezys that were supposedly limited, and he would package them and swap them for the real ones that the company was buying. So then he purchased 153 fake Yeezys at $50 when the company was selling them for $188 a piece. He would then profit a total of $35,000. So he's basically just swapping the fake ones and then selling them on his own time. So yeah, the company sold $36,000 worth of limited Yeezys through Bailey, which is the social media influencer. So basically Harry would go and promote the shoes that Brian was flipping and swapping for the real ones. And in order to get profit, he would receive 25% of the sales brought in through Bailey. Bailey didn't get anything out of it. She was just doing it for free shoes. The company sent her free shoes. So yeah, Brian profited through the revenue of Bailey, and then, Harry profited through the revenue of Bailey, and then Brian profited by swapping the shoes and selling them on his own time. Additionally, you have Payflex. That was like the payroll operations that Tim dealt with. That was suggested by Brian. It was mainly like because they don't have any regulations on refunds. So when a customer would request a refund, it would get denied. And then fake reviews. Tim was sick one week and out of town. So if you looked into the reviews, there was no bad reviews. Brian would go in. He had website experience, so he'd go in and fabricate all the fake reviews. So yeah, at the beginning of the fraud, I would give you like a bunch of fake reviews and information on employees. And then it would basically lead you to believe that there was something suspicious around Bailey. If you asked her questions, then you could see that Harry was doing suspicious stuff with Brian in regards to the shoes. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. The download one, oh. Yeah.
Mix things up for you.
Yeah, I was confused. You got me. All right, so mine wasn't necessarily fraud that took place in a business, but identity theft. And so Olivia and AJ came up with this clever plan to get a job at the Bank of Kirksville as a bank teller. And since they got a job as a bank teller, they're privy to sensitive information of the clientele that had a business with the Bank of Kirksville. And their genius idea was to take advantage of the fact that these sports betting websites offered what they call bonus bets to new members. So what they would do was steal the identity of members at the Bank of Kirksville, open fictitious sports betting accounts under their names with the stolen identification, deposit $5 and get $150 in bonus bets, and then hedge their bets on an equal bet. That way they were guaranteed to make profit. They made $147 on each platform, 5 platforms a person. That's $740 a person. And then they had an agreement where they would flip back and forth and do one a day for the entire year, which led to $270,000 of fraudulent winnings from these gambling sites. It was uncovered when Lotus, the forensic auditor, received a notice from Billy Horschel, retired PGA professional now living in Kirksville, Missouri. He received an IRS notice of understated revenue from these sports gambling sites. I let the IRS know that he had earned some money, but it didn't show up on the tax return. So they inquired with a lot of other individuals in Kirksville. There were hundreds of people affected, and all of them had Bank of Kirksville in common. Including was one employee of Bank of Kirksville that defrauded and sold the identity of a fellow employee who noticed that they were, showing up with new Rolexes and Lululemon clothes, and AJ bought some left-handed golf clubs. After finding all this out, you could see that Billy Horschel's bank statement did not have any winnings from the gambling sites, but Olivia and AJ decided to deposit it directly into their bank account, and they were arrested. Okay, so mine was over the Sub Soccer Shop, which is bus spelled backwards. You haven't caught that yet. It's a small local soccer shop that sells jerseys, soccer balls, all of the different soccer equipment. Brian is the owner, very lax attitude and approach to management. Puts a lot of trust in John and Nilo to pretty much operate the entire shop. John's in charge of pretty much anything financial, making budgets. He handles all the cash and makes sales reports. Nilo, he pretty much does everything Brian should be doing and overseeing everyone, but is pretty lazy. Bailey is the cashier. She just does cashier stuff and reports cash to the safe deposit. Tim is a stalker. He has a lot of financial debt, so that's a little key into who might be the one committing the fraud. And then Bill just prints the personalized jerseys. So I kind of already wrote down who did the frauds, but John, pretty simple, would take cash out of the safe and deposit 85% and keep 15%. Brian usually does this, but because he's not really around, John offered to do that. So if you just asked, which Matt was my investigator, if you asked for some of this information, be able to, solve it with a simple base formula and see that the ending balances were not adding to the bank deposits.
So over the 4-month period, he was able to steal $1,500. He was seeing a new girl in town, so he had to buy new clothes and fresh new haircuts every 2 weeks, so that was his benefit. And then Tim, part of his job as a stalker was to take scrap material and put it in the dumpster in the back. He would park his car right next to the dumpster and would take occasional smoke breaks and would take a big tub of jerseys and put it right back into his car and then resell them. So that was a $12,000 impact over 4 months, and it was to pay off that student debt. So if you asked if how much debt he would have, that's a pretty good indicator. So that's pretty much it.
Interesting last name, is that Croatian?
I had it at Noge, but I was so tired of typing Noge out. Changed back to John.
That's good. I think we're all done for today. Did I miss anybody? Be interesting to see how many more frauds Dylan commits on Thursday, so. All right, see y'all then.